Hey folks, this is Riker, and we just had today the first Diablo 4 campfire chat, a dev livestream, during which some pretty significant news was dropped of changes that they are going to be bringing to the game soon. And I was honestly mind blown to find out about one of these changes in particular happening so quickly. So this campfire chat is a new live stream format that the devs are doing. It's not going to replace the dev update live streams. It's a little bit more informal. This one lasted an hour and 15 minutes, and in this video, we're going to summarize some of the key points. Now, in case you haven't been following what has led us to this point, the game's been out for 10 days, and there are a number of community complaints, concerns, criticisms that have been put forth, a few in particular that are really repeated by a lot of voices in the community. When the game first released, there were a number of broken builds or broken powers, things that were way overperforming, and then there were a number of efficient XP routes that have been consistently nerfed, and so a lot of players have been responding to these hotfixes with, hey, you know, you're nerfing everything, why don't you instead buff things? So the first thing that the devs did on this stream was lay down some expectations and clear up the differences between hotfixes and patches, basically. Hotfixes basically being things that are very minor in scope, can be adjusted very rapidly, very fast turnaround on a development side, whereas patches are things that require more time to iterate on to make sure it's not going to break anything, because game development is very complex. Even a small change could have something that breaks, so you have to have a QA process, have QA testers ensure, no, this doesn't actually break anything, because when they're making a fast change, they want to ensure it actually improves the game and doesn't break 10 other things. There's also a number of certification processes that patches have to go through, particularly when you're dealing with a multi-platform game across, you know, you're dealing with Microsoft for Xbox, dealing with Sony on PlayStation. They also want to try to keep the game up as much as possible, and rolling out a hotfix can be done without taking the servers down, but a bigger patch does require downtime to roll out to clients, to servers, and everything. But they did clarify that they are working on a big chunky patch. They have 13 pages of patch notes, and they're not even done yet. But we did get in this stream a preview of the things, or some of the things that they are working on. And then they moved right into talking about what are some of the top community discussions. And the first thing that they addressed was the fact that they've been nerfing the monster density in these efficient dungeon runs. So I know most people aren't playing the game this way, but at the higher ends of play, for those players who seek to optimize their XP flow, whose main driving factor in playing these games is to be as efficient as possible, level as fast as possible, they've discovered, well, the best thing for me to do, it's not Nightmare Dungeons, it is to find one or more specific dungeons that have high density of monsters and elite monsters, and you just run that one dungeon over and over. And that's all you do. You don't even finish the dungeon, you don't bother with the boss because that's garbage XP. You maybe run half the dungeon and then reset it, so that you're cutting out all travel time to get to the dungeon. You're literally just doing this rather dull run over and over. And that's just the best XP. And we've seen consistently a number of hotfixes come out that have nerfed these XP runs. And so the devs in the stream spoke about them seeing non-ideal player behavior patterns. And obviously this is what they're referring to, and what needs to be clarified is that the devs aren't trying to nerf the fun out of the game, and it's not even about, oh, you're not playing the game the way we want you playing the game. I don't think anyone wants to be playing the game this way. I don't think anyone thinks the idea of fun is running half of a dungeon, of one of the 120 dungeons over and over ad nauseum. It's just that's what's efficient. So the devs spoke about how the system that they built into the game that they hoped would be the system that people would be engaging with and grinding repeatedly would be the Nightmare Dungeons. Nightmare Dungeons have more randomization built into it. They have affixes that could change the experience on repeated playthroughs. They have the ability to be empowered to be more difficult. That's the system that should be more fun and therefore should be more rewarding, and it should be the optimum way to play. So they're working on ways to improve that experience to ensure, or to try to move players to that content. But again, a little bit more holistically first, we've effectively consistently seen nerfs to different things, to XP runs, to broken, overpowered things since the game launched 10 days ago. Nerfs to a specific thing are generally a lot easier to roll out than buffs to everything else, but Joe Shelley did have this to say.
You know, sometimes people will say like, well, can't you, anytime something is too strong, can't you just buff everyone else?
Right.
And while in theory you can do that, when you have many classes and many builds, and you have one thing that is too strong, the process of buffing everything else, A, is likely to result in more balance issues because you're changing many, many things at once. And B, you can very quickly run into a place where you have, 65,000% on Whirlwind or something, and it can get sort of crazy. And when I came here today, I was thinking about, I don't have a shirt like this, but I thought about like getting a shirt and then writing, it's time for the buffs on it.
We can make you one.
I didn't do that, but it is.
So
it is
if we have
time
a buff
for the
shirt, it
buffs.
has to be Adam.
So now that things have been nerfed down to more of a baseline, we can expect to see some buffs rolling out in this future patch or future patches. Now, while talking about the Nightmare Dungeon changes, they actually dropped the fact that the majority of players, the majority of people who have purchased Diablo 4 have not even finished the campaign yet. And man, I talk about this a lot on my stream, but we're effectively playing two entirely different games. There's, this is a whole topic, but it is so difficult to make a game like this and make it work for both extremes of the player base, where you have people that are not caring about being optimal. They're not putting in 10 hours a day. They're just enjoying the game. They're doing side quests. They don't care to pick the best whatever, the best route, the best skills. They're just making something that works. They're not following a build guide. They're just playing the game normally, doing whatever works, and having fun with that, enjoying the art and the music and the story. And then at the other extreme, you have the people that love the systems, and their entire impetus in playing one of these games is how to be as good as quickly as possible, how to get as much power as quickly as possible, how to empower my character as much as possible. And the disparity here is so wide in these two play styles that it's very challenging for a developer to ensure that both of these camps of players are perfectly happy. And the thing is, that end, the more casual end, consists of the larger majority of the player base, but it's the other end. These are the people that are putting the most time into the game and are most likely to stick with the game for the longest time. So both camps are important. But back to Nightmare Dungeons, so some of the changes that they're going to make in order to ensure that Nightmare Dungeons do become that repeatable content that will be the optimum way to farm XP. They're going to increase the XP you get from Nightmare Dungeons. Their goal is to make them more efficient than doing the side dungeons, the non-Nightmare Dungeons, which is what has been most efficient so far. And, one of the questions is, well, if I gotta get on my horse, I'm in town, I activate a Nightmare Sigil, I gotta pony up and ride over to the Nightmare Dungeon. That takes 30 seconds, it takes whatever. If the dungeon itself takes a couple minutes to do, it's a huge amount of wasted time. So how do you get that to be as efficient as just running the same dungeon over and over with zero travel time? And this is the change that I cannot believe is happening. I can't believe it's happening so soon. I did anticipate this happening eventually, but I would have never thought it would have happened before even Season 1, because I knew this was going to be a huge complaint from this end of the community, and they are cutting out the travel time to Nightmare Dungeons. There's effectively going to be a system where you activate the sigil and then you will just teleport straight to the entrance of the Nightmare Dungeon. This makes them a lot more similar to rifts or greater rifts in Diablo 3, where in D3 you just sit in town and you spam open these portals and just run them over and over. You're still now traveling to a place out of town, but it's a lot closer to that experience of being able to just spam the dungeons. So again, Nightmare Dungeons, they're improving reward and they are removing travel time, and these are changes that they want to roll out before Season 1 launches. They also reconfirmed Season 1 is launching mid to late July. They spoke briefly about necromancers and their corpse farts, the blighted corpse problem. Blighted corpse creates this dark cloud of toxic gas, on the battlefield, and it obscures ground effects, so people are dying because the necromancer in their party is doing this and they can't see the negative ground effect. This is apparently a bug. They're gonna fix it. They do want all negative enemy ground effects to be readable before any party positive effects. Now, another big topic, Renown, and what you gotta farm again for Season 1. I've seen so many people say, if I gotta farm Renown again, I am not playing. I'm not doing Renown again, man. I'm not doing it. I grinded it. I hated it. I'm never doing this again. Seen a lot of that, and previously, the understanding we had was that you would have to get Renown again in Season 1. The only thing that would carry over would be your Altars of Lilith. Not for Renown purposes, but just the buffs that you got from the Altars of Lilith would be permanent. Now, they are revisiting a couple things. They're meeting us halfway, at least. And the first is Fog of War. So anything you've revealed on the map will still be revealed in Season 1. You don't have to rediscover the map. Similarly with the Altars of Lilith, you won't have to rediscover them. If you got it, it will appear as completed on the map. This is a change, because right now if you go onto an alt character, while yes, you still have the bonus from that Altar of Lilith, you don't see it on the map, and you could still discover it again for Renown. So moving into Season 1, these are the two things that will not be reset. Instead, you will start with the Renown that you already got for those two things. So if you got, for argument's sake, random number, 1,000 Renown from Altars of Lilith and 1,000 Renown from your discovery of the world map, then going into Season 1, you will start with 2,000 Renown already acquired. And again, all the map and the altar unlocked as you see it. You still have to do Renown. You will still have to farm up the other things, but you're not starting from zero. So that means today you can do all the Altars of Lilith, you can farm up the entire, remove all the Fog of War from the map, and all of that will carry over into Season 1, but you will still have to do dungeons again, you will still have to do side quests again, and to complete your Renown, you don't need to do all of those things. You'll have to do strongholds again, but again, it's sort of a meeting halfway, and the devs have said that they will continue to reevaluate what does and does not get reset. This is something that I've been telling people. People come by my chat and ask about this all the time, about Renown, and I kept telling people, this is not a hill the devs are going to die on. We're already seeing now them open to making changes here. So if this is still not enough, if you feel that, no, I want even more stuff to carry over, put out that feedback. The devs are very clearly listening. Post on the forums, post on Reddit, on socials. They most appreciate posting on the forums. It's the easiest place for them to find that feedback, but they look everywhere. And just as a general note on giving feedback, in my opinion, the way to give helpful feedback that in a way that is most constructive for the devs is to start by highlighting what you feel is problematic. Explain why it's a problem. Don't just assume that it's taken for granted. Like, well, I don't have to explain why this is a problem. It should be obvious. Clearly outline why this is a problem, and then outline how it is a negative experience for you. I know everyone wants to just jump to proposing solutions, but that's not what devs want to hear. Devs have already thought of a million different ideas. There's a bunch of people on the dev team. Whatever idea you come up with, they've probably already discussed internally and either tossed aside or shelved or iterated upon. So explain how you're feeling. Explain why something is a negative experience for you. They want to understand the root of why you're proposing an idea or a solution, because they might already have something on the back burner that fixes the core problem that you're trying to propose a solution to. So for instance, it seems as though in this particular case of Renown, they don't want to reset everything because they feel that some things are fun to do every season and some things are not fun to do every season. So if you can clearly outline, hey, this is not fun for me to do every season, that's good feedback for them to put to use. And all these changes to Renown, that should come into effect for Season 1. And it'll retroactively affect alts as well. That is your other characters, your non-main character. Alright, next topic, gems. A lot of people have been asking for a separate gem tab. Gems take up so much inventory space, so much stash space. I'm not even picking up gems anymore. So they're aiming for a longer term fix. Maybe for Season 2, they're going to move gems into something similar to a crafting item. So right now when you pick up crafting materials, it goes into your materials tab, and they want to move gems into that, which is a fantastic change. This means that gems will take up 0 inventory space. And when you go to the jeweler, or whenever you go to a craftsman, you would select the gem would automatically populate when you're selecting a different recipe that would require it. And on the topic of materials, there are currently material caps in the game. Most of you probably haven't gotten there, but of the level 90 plus players are like, hey, I've reached the cap of this material, why can't I hold more of this crafting material? There's apparently no good reason why the cap is at any given number, so they're just going to bump that number up. Those are rookie numbers. And that should change in a future planned update before Season 1. Now the devs also spoke about resistances and highlighted that there appears to be some confusion within the community about how resistances work, which is leading some people to think that resistances are completely useless, which apparently is not the case. What it basically comes down to is a combination of the multiplicative nature of the scaling of resistance, whereby getting more resistance means every additional resistance you get, it changes your resistance number less and less and less and less. I talk about this in my Ultimate Mechanics Guide and explain why the math works out this way to make it seem like it's less effective. And the second thing is that playing on higher world tier, you get more nerfs to your resistances, meaning you have to stack more resistance. And also the fact that armor contributes to your damage reduction also seems to downplay the importance of resistance. They do feel though that in practice resistances currently are a little less valuable than they want them to be, so they are going to find some way to buff or rework the resistance system, but because it's such a complex system with so many interactions with other systems, this is going to be a longer term change. Maybe Season 2. Basically, they're currently finishing up Season 1. It's going to be going through certification processes, so there's a lot of stuff that, sure, they'd love to do for Season 1, but yeah, they gotta launch Season 1. And they express that one of their main focuses for seasons is ensuring that every season has new content in it. That's their #1 priority. They also want to bring with every season, bug fixes, quality of life changes, but they never want to have a season that's just, okay, this is the season of quality of life changes. They always want to ensure that they are bringing new content. That's going to be the star of every season. And they also don't want to just rush out some kind of change that will then break the game in some unforeseen way. Now, on the topic of hardcore, they have noticed that there might be some issues with certain hardcore deaths. Sometimes there are bugs leading to some hardcore deaths. Sometimes there's disconnection issues that they want to find a way to address. Right now in game, there's something called a Scroll of Escape. It's a rare hardcore drop that lets you escape whenever you choose to. And what they're looking to implement here is if the game detects that you disconnect and you have a Scroll of Escape on you, it will automatically pop that to save you. They also addressed currently World Tier 4 world bosses drop caches that require level 80 to open, but you could be doing World Tier 4 as of level 60, so here's something that you can't use for another, 20 hours of play. That's apparently a bug. So you will now be able to open it at any level, but the items therein may still be higher level. So you might not be able to use the items, but you can at least open the cache, see that it's trash, and salvage the item. They also spoke to what seems to be a misunderstanding in the community about item levels. Like, I'm level 25, why is all the gear dropping level 18? The required level is not something to focus on. Item power is what's important. There is a loose correlation between item power and required level, but they don't always match. You could have an item that has a higher item level than what you have equipped, but a lower level requirement. So overall, the lesson here is just ignore that number. Just look at item power. They also address the fact that druids currently have a bug whereby they are getting certain unique barbarian items to drop, which should only be dropping for barbarians. This is a bug, they're gonna fix this. However, you should still seldomly be able to get uniques for other classes, non-smart loot. On the topic of social features, looking for groups, stuff like that, the team is looking into implementing more social features in the future, but they need time to iterate on these systems to find out what the best solutions are. This is an area where I was kind of disappointed in with Diablo 4. It's a much more social-oriented game, but it feels like a step back with regards to social features compared to Diablo 3. We don't have community groups. We don't have easy ways to party up with other people, but one thing I failed to consider was that this is a cross-play game, and a lot of these things that worked well in the PC version, how do you make that work well and a good experience for everyone in cross-play? So overall, the message here is expect social features to get better and improve over time. And we can also expect with patches, performance issues and that kind of stuff to get worked out. The devs then took questions from chat and addressed the whole fake question fiasco.
I know we do want to take some questions from chat and so forth from Twitch chat. I will do my best to actually announce names. I will announce the names so people know that they can go back into chat and see the names and not go like, oh my gosh,
you made up those names.
Made up these names.
Those aren't
and
real
so
names.
Forth. And I will note that was not our interview. So that like we did not come up with that question.
One question was, can we teleport to players directly instead of having to go to town first? The answer is basically no, but of course they're constantly evaluating feedback. Next question was, are they going to buff resource generation? And the answer is basically that buffs will be coming to a number of different things without specifics. They're not going to buff resource generation across the board, but they are buffing certain builds that maybe are struggling with resource generation. They just never want to be at a point where the average build in the game has so much resource generation that it becomes a non-issue. They still want resource management to be a game mechanic. When asked about mob density, they said that they are basically not going to be buffing mob density. They've nerfed things down to a baseline, and what they're doing in Nightmare Dungeons is not going to be buffing mob density, but just buffing the XP that you get. Now, when we talk about mob density, we're talking about the number of monsters on screen. That said, because now that they've brought density of enemies across different dungeons to a more even level, they could more easily now in the future, if the feedback takes them that way, bring up density across the board. They just needed to nerf these outlier dungeons that everyone was farming. We did find out that we will continue to get more dev updates. The next big one, the next big dev livestream will happen around Season 1. One question was about, hey, can we change our character's haircut after creating the character, since we can change other things? And the answer is basically no, not yet at least. Maybe in the future, their priority is to get more hairstyles before giving you the ability to get a haircut. When asked about having a completed side quest tab in the journal, they're looking at ways to improve tracking methods in the UI for different things. These are future plans. And that wraps up the major takeaways from this update. Overall, lots of promising stuff. Of course, this doesn't address every single concern, but it does hit some of the major ones. Just the Nightmare Dungeon change by itself should be a huge improvement to the way this game is being played and enjoyed. But I turn the question to you folks. What did you think of these updates? Are you happy? Are you unhappy? Did you not get enough out of it? Are you not happy with the direction that things are going? Are you one of the people that still hasn't finished the campaign? Sound off in the comments with how you're enjoying D4. Also, folks, in case you haven't seen it, I got a guide that I put out this week on 4 tools that I use all the time when playing Diablo 4. Helltide Tracker, World Boss Tracker, and more. Do give that a look. You can also check out my Ultimate Beginner Guide that is chock full of tips. And even if you're not quite a beginner, even if you're an intermediary player, there's going to be stuff in there that you're going to learn. But thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch, Patreon, and YouTube supporters for making these videos possible. If you enjoyed this video, please share it. Check out these other videos, and subscribe to join Riker's Raiders for more Diablo 4 content.